Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Teacher Louisiana FFA Nominating Committee Training. In case you don't know, my name's Sara Toal. I work as a Nominating Committee Coordinator with Louisiana FFA in the office of Mr. Lejeune. I've spent about 6 or 7 years going through the nominating committee training, through the nominating committee process as an area officer candidate, a state officer candidate, as well as a national officer candidate. So now I've been able to kind of get on the other side of it and help our state association form and go through the process of selecting our next area and state officers. And I'm here with Tristan Foret.
Hey y'all, my name is Tristan. I will be working alongside Sara throughout the process at State Convention and the work leading up to it. I was a state officer 2019, 2020. Prior to that, in 2018, I was the state nomcom chairman. And last year I was blessed with the opportunity to sit on the National Nominating Committee. So I look forward to working with our state staff and getting to share some of my experiences through state and national nomcom, and just working with the process and kind of making sure that our process runs smoothly. We're here to support the state and support the association, and I look forward to doing that with our state staff.
Yeah, we're really excited to have, Tristan's experience as well as our experience. So we're really excited for this year and very excited to be able to, be transparent and open with our process. So that's another reason that we wanted to have this training today. So we'll go ahead and get started on the nominating committee. And this is the nominating committee process. And Tristan will go ahead and start with that.
Alrighty, so kind of to talk about what the nominating committee process is, they have some really good bullet points here on the slide. The nominating committee is truly just an interview process that tests the candidate's knowledge, capabilities, and competencies. These competencies are tested through different rounds that are going to be geared towards finding specific qualities that we want our state officers to have. And the way that we test these competencies is they're going to be scored through a panel of peers and mentors. And that panel will be made up of people who are an accurate sample representation of our state. So on the next slide, we break down the nominating committee is 8 current FFA members from around the state. This breaks up 2 members from each of our 4 areas. We have 4 adult members representing 1 from each area and 1 past state officer. So by building our committee with this slate of individuals, it gives us the majority of our committee will be made up of students. It's peers of the people who be running. So we feel like that gives an accurate representation. Since our association is here to serve the students, we want the majority of the voice of the nominating committee to be students. But at the same time, these individuals that'll be serving as state officers are going to be serving our association on a larger scale. They'll be the face of our association, not only within the state of Louisiana, but on a national level. So it's also, we put in 4 adult representatives from each area, just to kind of give our student representation some guidance throughout the process. We want to have kind of a checks and balances system, whereas if we have 4 adults, they're going to be kind of serving as an older figure on the committee that our members can turn to when looking through the process. And also we have 1 past state officer on the process, and this is just going to this person is going to serve as someone who's lived the experiences that these state officers will go through. Everybody else who sat on the committee has not ever been a state officer prior. Some of them may be future state officers, but it's important that we have someone who said, look, when I was a state officer, we experienced this. This was my lived experiences. So that's kind of the breakdown of who's going to serve on our committee. Okay. So the nominating committee process is made up of a committee of individuals who are volunteering their time, and they're here to serve the association. The primary goal of this committee is that they're going to select the 10 best student representatives who are going to serve and lead the Louisiana FFA Association as a state officer team. We want these candidates to be elected and to serve a role that they're gonna have an impact on the members of our state association. And we want these representatives to be the best possible representatives for the future of our association. And everybody on our committee is here to serve our association. That's what the committee is designed to do. And that's going to be the main focus and the primary goal that we continue to refocus on throughout the entire process. Um, so the way we accomplish these goals is we have a highly structured system. Um, from the very first time that our committee has interacted with Sara, all the way through the entire process, our committee members have followed a very strict structure. We want every committee member and every candidate to have the exact same experience, which kind of leads me to the next bullet point of employing a fair and transparent process. Um, there's kind of always been this cloud that's followed around national around nominating committees that they're out to get everybody, and it's always kind of been this scary process. Everybody feared nominating committee members, and that's not really what we want the nominating committee to be viewed as. These people who are volunteering their time, whether they're students or adult candidates on the process or adult consultants through the process, are all donating their time. They're choosing to serve our state. These individuals are going to be making decisions, and they're going to be slating 10 people. They're going to change the future of what our organization looks like. One different person in the officer team can change one student's experience and can have a multitude of impacts. So these individuals are really sacrificing their time because they care about the future of our organization. They're not out to get anybody. They're not scary individuals. They're here because they care about what the future of Louisiana FFA looks like, as we all do. So we want that to be a fair and transparent process, and we want to set up all candidates for the maximum success that we can. We engage committee and candidates in a professional interviewing experience, kind of tying back to we want to make sure that these candidates are set up for success and they are given the best possible opportunity to perform at their maximum capabilities throughout the process. We want to provide all candidates with access to current and relevant resources in preparing for the selection process. We're very transparent about what resources are out there. I believe Sara has sent out a packet to all candidates with supplemental information to study for. We really strongly suggest that you study that information. Those are current topics that the state office has located, and we'd hope that you'd use that in your preparation process because those are things that we feel are relevant. And the last point is employing the use of all competencies to measure candidates' abilities as a state officer. When we get later in the process, when we start talking about scoring, we're going to get into what a competency is. The competencies are kind of the builder of this entire process, and we kind of want to open that up to, hey, this is for the first time, this is what we're looking for, because we want the candidates to be as prepared as possible when they come into the interview room. So I'm going to turn it over to Sara, and she's going to go over what are the rounds that are going to be what rounds are going to look like that the candidates will go through, and she's going to break them down one by one and kind of give you a in-depth look of what a candidate will look at for each round that they're going to enter.
Right. A really important thing that we want to keep in mind is we view the National Nominating Committee process as the gold standard in selecting a state officer team or an area officer team. So we try to mirror our process to the national process as much as humanly possible. As you can see, we have 6 rounds. I accidentally put round 5 twice. That's my bad. 6 rounds. These are rounds that I went through, that Tristan saw candidates go through at the national process, and that's what determines national officers. All of these rounds test candidates' abilities in different aspects that are important to being a state officer, whether that's personal communication, being able to have a conversation in a professional setting, giving a speech, a workshop. It doesn't matter. We have this process because it does test a well-rounded amount of competencies that we'll get into. So the very first round of the nominating committee process, it's called a personal panel introduction, and it's just what it sounds like. Each candidate will go before the entire 13 members of the committee. They're going to have 5 minutes to answer 3 questions that are just to get to know them. This will be the first time that the committee members will officially meet the candidates, and this is the candidate's chance to make that first impression a lasting one. Some questions that that have been used in the past are, what's your supervised agricultural experience? What's something valuable you bring to a team? What's your definition of leadership? It can be anything among introductory questions. In this round, Committee members are looking for honesty. They're looking for well-rounded answers. They're looking for candidates that are able to elaborate on themselves, but also empower others as well as FFA through their answers. So that is our first round. Our second round, which we are bringing back to state convention this year after, COVID, this round was a little bit difficult to do via online, but it is done at the national process, and it does bring valuable evidence and, experiences for both the committee and candidates. This is our one-on-ones. Every candidate will have 3 minutes to speak with each member of the committee. So they're going to have 13 3-minute conversations one-on-one. This allows candidates to build one-on-one rapport and build relationships with the committee in that personal individual setting. That's really important. At the end of the 3 minutes, candidates will rotate to the next committee member until they've spoken to all the members. Some example questions are pretty similar to a personal panel introduction, but one thing that we really like, I know Tristan and I have talked about this, is that the committee members pick these questions themselves. So every committee member, when they ask these questions, it's not because they were assigned these questions, it's because they genuinely want to know this about the candidates. Some examples that have been used in the past are, tell me about a time you worked with someone different than yourself. I've actually received all of these questions in a one-on-one. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? When do you feel the most confident? Again, it can be any questions that someone would be able to ask in a one-on-one setting. Again, this is really going to play on the candidate's ability to build relationships in a one-on-one setting. Tristan and I were both state officers, and I can't count how many one-on-one conversations I had with members, teachers, industry representatives. So it is a talent and a skill to be able to be personable and conversational in a one-on-one and make people feel heard in your conversation. So that's our round 2, one-on-ones. Round 3 is probably one of the rounds that candidates are most nervous about, especially talking to our candidate pool this year. Stand and Deliver has come up a lot. Stand and Deliver tests the candidate's ability to put their knowledge in a short amount of time into a speech. Again, we make our rounds based on skills that are very important to being a state officer. Our state officers, they might get thrown in front of a body of people and asked to give a 3-minute greeting or asked to give a speech on an assigned topic very quickly with no preparation or memorization being allowed. So in this round, candidates will be expected to give a 5 to 6 minute speech on an assigned knowledge topic. They do get 20 minutes to prepare, so they'll be taken individually from the holding room into a preparation room. They'll be given a piece of paper that has their topic, some writing utensil, and some note paper for them to prepare. They'll be left alone for 20 minutes to prepare. They are not allowed outside resources, their cell phones, anything that connect to internet, no previous notes, no resource binders, only their previous knowledge that they have already prepared with themselves. So then after they prepare, they're brought in front of the entire group of committee members. They present their speech, and then they're asked one knowledge question, and the candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. I have attached an example prompt. It says, as a state officer, you're asked to give a speech to Random High FFA chapter senior members on why they should join the Louisiana FFA alumni once they graduate. In your presentation, you should cover what the FFA alumni is, the benefits of joining, and what the alumni does to help the Louisiana FFA Association. So that would be what is given to the candidates, 20 minutes to prepare as they seem fit, as they deem fit, and then come into the interview room, present their speech, and at the end of their speech, they'll be asked a question. The question is predetermined, and it's the same for all candidates at the state level. For example, for this prompt, a possible question would be, what resources are available at the state level to educate people on the alumni? And so that would be asked to every single candidate. In this round, like I already previously talked about, giving speeches is another huge part of being a state officer. They're going to be, giving retiring addresses, keynotes, banquet speeches, speaking at ag industry meetings and conferences. So this is going to test their communication, their knowledge level, as well as their ability to prepare a well-rounded, organized presentation in a short amount of time. Round 4 is another round that usually gets candidates a little bit nervous, and that's our advocacy round robin. This round consists of 3 separate interviews. One room will be FFA, one room agriculture education, and one room relating to the agricultural industry. So our committee members will be divided into the 3 different rooms. And this is one of the rounds that the committee only observes and does not interact with the candidate. They don't ask questions, they don't give feedback, they're only there to observe. In these rooms will be outside representatives from these 3 different areas. For example, for agriculture education, they could be talking to an FFA advisor on ways to make their program, ways to recruit more students into their ag program. So you'll sit down and you'll have a 6-minute conversation with this representative. One thing that I see reoccurring, kind of coming up about this round, is that this is a conversation. This is not a panel interview. So we want candidates to be able to give as much as they receive, meaning they are free to ask their representative questions. They need to be using recall. They need to be providing a balanced, inclusive conversation. So once they complete their 6 minutes of conversation in each room, they'll be rotated into the next and the next until they've completed all 3 of their interview rounds.
Can I say something about that?
Go ahead, Tristan.
One thing that I saw when I was in state nomcom and even on a national level that I think is really important about this round for candidates is that this round, the nominating committee, as she said, is strictly there to observe. The conversation that the candidate's going to be having is going to be with the representative you're talking to. So if you're an advisor or you're a candidate, just make sure going to this round that you keep the concentration of the conversation with the person you're talking to, and just pretend like the nominating committee is not ever there, because it can be distracting as a committee member if someone's trying to include you in a conversation when you're only there as an observer. That was the only thing I had about that round.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because this is probably the only round that you have to force yourself to kind of remember that your focus is not on the nominating committee. That's really difficult. I remember as a candidate, it was nerve-wracking to be focusing on the person I'm talking to while I have 4 people that I know are writing notes on everything I'm saying and scoring me. So this is something to keep in mind during preparation, that the committee is there to observe. The committee is not there to interact. You are there to put your full focus on this representative. The topics are going to be somewhat knowledge-based. It's going to be about a topic, FFA, Ag Ed, or agriculture that's relevant to the current times, that state officers need to be able to elaborate and speak on. They won't go in completely blinded. They'll have 60 seconds right before they walk in. They'll be handed a piece of paper. It'll say who they are speaking to, a little bit about that person, and kind of what the overall theme of the conversation needs to be. An example prompt is, you're about to speak to Mr. Random Ag teacher from Random High FFA chapter. He's wondering how to get his students more interested in competing in different career development events. Many of his students don't come from agricultural backgrounds, so they don't feel that they can be successful in these competitions. As a state officer, you're asked to have a conversation with Mr. Random Ag teacher about how to get these non-traditional FFA members, like those at his school, involved with CDEs. This is a great example prompt for, maybe the FFA room. So candidates will have this prompt, 60 seconds to read it. At that time, they'll walk into the room. They'll be greeted by the person they're speaking to. The committee members will either be to the side or behind them. They won't be, directly in line of eyesight or anything like that. While talking to candidates, especially this year, a lot of questions have come up about how to start the conversation. I always tell candidates, go in like you're meeting this person. You probably will be meeting this person for the very first time. Shake their hand, introduce yourself, start the conversation, answer questions, but also ask questions. Ask them about themselves, what they want to know. Show your knowledge in ways that are a wide range of resources and, from your experience as well as your research. Don't just say, well, I read somewhere that. No, really show, like, build your foundation of knowledge. This round, it's really important. All rounds are very important, but I think this round is especially important to show because not only your knowledge, but also your one-on-one conversation skills as well. I think this round comes up a lot in deliberation with the committee. So yes, that's round 4, advocacy round robin, a really important and enjoyable round. So round 5 is facilitation. Another skill that is incredibly important to being a state officer is presenting workshops. I think in my years of being a state officer, I maybe gave over 50 different workshops to students. It's a skill that's incredibly important. So in this round, candidates will be given 30 minutes to prepare a 12 to 15 minute portion of a student workshop in front of a student audience. Candidates will be given an overall objective and be expected to provide an experience and learning opportunity. All of these candidates, whether they're area officers or current chapter officers, most likely, if not led a workshop, have definitely experienced a student workshop or session. So they should know what to expect going into it. Us at the state office, we have set up Zoom meetings with candidates to go over what this round looks like. We've walked through practice prompts with them. That resource is always available to our candidates. In that room, in our preparation room, candidates are given different materials that they can incorporate into their presentation. Guaranteed, you'll have writing utensils, paper, index cards, tear sheets or flip charts. That's what's guaranteed. But then also you kind of have the miscellaneous where I've seen in the past, like tennis balls, string, yarn, plastic cups, different just miscellaneous materials that candidates are able to use. But the guaranteed is, the paper, the writing utensils, and the tear sheets. For state office at this time, one thing that that is a little bit different from the national process is at the national process, we did this individually. You prepared by yourself and demonstrated by yourself. At the state level, they are going to be working in groups of either 2 or 3. This is, pretty reflective of the state officer responsibilities because as a state officer, I'd say 90% of if you're going to present a workshop, it is with, 1 or more of your fellow state officer members. As national officers, most of the time when they're facilitating, they are by themselves. So they will be working in a group for state nominating committee. Again, here's a practice prompt. As a state officer, you've been asked to present a workshop for the Cali FFA chapter. Their advisor has asked you to present a demonstration for their first-year agri-science students on FFA opportunities and how to find your place inside the organization. So again, this is what is going to be provided in that preparation room in that 30 minutes of prep time. What they're looking for in this round, it's a vast amount of things. We are going to be bringing in an outside group of students from a chapter. They're not going to be presenting this to the committee, but they'll actually have, a chapter of like 6 to 10 members come and be the students for this workshop. This allows the committee to actually witness student and candidate interactions, see how well the candidates are able to come up with content, activities, learning opportunities, how they engage with members. This is going to be huge. How do they ask questions members? How do they empower members, make them feel heard? What is their presence like? Are they pleasant to listen to? Do, the students want more from them whenever they leave? Or, it's a lot of things. This, I say it every time, it's going to be huge. Such a huge part of being a state officer is facilitation. This is one of the rounds that I've been telling candidates, really should not wait until convention to start thinking about this round. This round needs, practice. This is not something that you're just born knowing how to do. Practice, practice, practice for this. I know Tristan, we've been talking about his time at the national level. I know that facilitation was one of those rounds again that was really important, was really brought up over and over again. And I think this is a round that it's such an awesome opportunity if candidates leading up during their preparation time think about this round. Because I know from watching Nominating Committee, it's very easy to see students that thought about this round in their months of preparation time, and students that just try to wing it, and it's just a lost opportunity. So this round is definitely one of those that you need to be practicing. And the last round of our nominating committee process is the final panel. If you remember, our first round was the personal panel introduction. This round is set up, structured, and organized identically to the first round, where candidates will have 5 minutes to answer 3 questions. What is different from this round is that the committee has witnessed and observed these candidates through 5 rounds. So at this point, they have a strong understanding of who these candidates are, as opposed to the first round, they're nearly strangers. This round is, we talked about first impressions. This is the candidate's last impression, and it needs to be a good one. So these questions aren't going to be introductory. They're going to be more concluding, like, what is the last thing we should know about you before we go into our official deliberation? Some example questions is, I've been asked this a few times, out of all the amazing candidates, why should we choose you? How have you been honest with us throughout this process? If elected, what might you be scared of? All of these questions are trying to pull out vulnerable, honest, and genuine answers. They're not looking for rehearse. They're not looking for cookie cutter. They're not looking for, anything that you rehearsed ahead of time. They're looking for, to really see you as a person. Again, we talked about mirroring our process from the national process. This round at the national level is not even done in official dress. It's done in like casual, business casual clothes, just because the objective of this round is to see you as a person, not you as the candidate. Because at the end of the day, we are electing actual people, not just candidates in blue jackets. So starting this year, we are incorporating that into our process as well. Our state officer candidates at state convention will not be in official dress for this round either. And we just feel that that even empowers and embraces more so the fact that kind of breaking that barrier of the blue jacket and only seeing you. So overall, that is our 6 rounds at the state nominating committee process. In terms of area officer elections, area officer nominating committee, it is going to be pieced from these rounds. You're going to have personal panel introduction, you're going to have final panel, you're going to have stand and deliver, and you're going to have advocacy round robin. We are not going to have facilitation or one-on-ones for area officer nominating committee. This is just because time restraints, as well as resources. We have 4 area officer nominating committees going on at one time, and we have like 2 days to do it. So also a much bigger candidate pool for area nominating committee at more than we do state nom-com. So we do base it off this process. We just have to cut down from 6 to 4 rounds. So those are the rounds. But then one thing that, Tristan was talking about, this cloud of uncertainty about nominating committee. The next process is the scoring and deliberation, which we're talking about transparency. That's something that we have to be transparent about, and we want to be transparent about. So I'll hand it over to Tristan to cover scoring and deliberation.
Alrighty, so the scoring system, as I said earlier, is based on competencies. These competencies are designed, um, these are the same competencies that we use on a national level. And these are designed as kind of the core fundamental things that we believe a good, well-rounded state officer should have. Um, the reason that we use these competencies is to avoid the days of where someone came into the nominating committee and they were just a good interviewer. Because you can go into a round and say a bunch of really kind things and say it in a polished manner, and you could be a really good public speaker, but unless the words that you use, unless the intent behind what you say is there, you can't kind of work yourself around a competency. You have to truly embody what it means to be a youth leader in agriculture to be able to be effective, through this process. So the five competencies that we're going to use is team player, communication, influence, areas of knowledge, and character. Um, these five competencies are going to be scored in every single round that the candidates are going to interact with the nominating committee in. As we it was throughout the competencies, we're going to break them down into smaller pieces for each round, and the candidates are going to be the scores are going to be based on how they display these competencies throughout their words and throughout the scenarios they use to answer the questions honestly. So to further break down the competencies, communication, what we're looking for in communication is the candidate demonstrates the effective forms of communication, i.e. nonverbal, listening, writing, speaking, facilitation, to convey a message both to a large group and a one-on-one setting. So just to give some examples of what we would look for in communication, when we are going through the advocacy round robin, something that a candidate member might look for is that the candidate that's going through the process is going to be having a one-on-one conversation with someone who is a representative of industry or education. Does that person actively engage in what they're talking about? Are they responding based on what they how they want the conversation to go, or are they responding based off of genuinely how they feel about what was said in front of them? So you don't want someone that's going to come in and try to ramrod a conversation and control it. You want someone who's going to have a genuine conversation with someone, because we're there to build relationship, to progressively build, and that should be your role as a youth leader. And in a group setting like facilitation, does that candidate go in and talk to the members as if they want the members to be actively engaged? As a state officer, we never want to talk at members. We're not there to boss them around or push them around. We're there to not only give them an experience to grow, but we're also growing with them. It's an us relationship, not a me and you. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking for in communication. It'll be broken down further, but that's kind of a gist of what we're looking for. Team player, we want the candidate to demonstrate the ability to work in a team, setting values, diversity of opinions, works to be inclusive in the processes, and willing to put others above themselves. Um, so in some of the scenario-based questions, we went over some earlier. When you're working with someone who has a difference in opinion with you, we want to see a candidate that's going to come in and say, for instance, so and so and I didn't have the same opinion when we were working on X, Y, and Z process. But however, we were willing to communicate and meet in the middle, or we were willing to say that, the decision we came up with, while it may have not really fit what either of us wanted, was the best for the chapter that we were serving. We just want to see someone who leads with compassion. And it's really what team player is about. It's about it's a morals and values competency more than anything. We want to see a we person, not an I me person. And that'll be broken down through most of your scenario based questions, as well as when they're doing group facilitation. How do they interact with their group partner? Area of knowledge is if a candidate demonstrates the ability to articulate the systematic nature of fiber, food, agriculture, and natural resources issues, FFA educational issues, and respective current issues. So this is kind of this is the competency that you can prepare for. There are some things in communication and team player that is more who you are as a person, but areas of knowledge is something that as a candidate, you control what knowledge you choose to go into the process with. Um, this is pretty much straightforward. We're not going to give you big outlandish topics that you shouldn't be familiar with. The scenarios that we're going to give you, the questions that we're going to ask, are topics that are going to be significant enough to our local area, as in our state, or a national, global reach, that as a high school student, you should, if you're actively engaged in what's happening in the agricultural community in FFA, these are some topics that you should have heard about and have wanted to know more about, because they affect you and they affect people in the industry and the community that you care about. So this is the one thing that you can prepare for. All of the content that was sent out by State Off to prepare for your state nominating committee process, this is where you're going to find the answers to the questions that you're going to be asked. We provide you with that information to give you the opportunity, to give everybody the opportunity to use the same information to study off of. And we want to know how much of a priority do you make it to know about an industry that you want to represent. So our next two competencies will be on the next slide. Character. So character displays a disposition that is authentic, inclusive, responsible, honest, mature, confident, and respectful. Character is probably the number one thing that you can't prepare for. It's not a competency that's out to get you. We're not trying to stump you. We just want to see that if you're running for a state officer or a state officer position, we want you to be a person that is going to genuinely build relationships with members, teachers, stakeholders, anybody who's actively involved in FFA or ag education. And that's what we're looking for. We just want a state officer that's going to willingly lead our organization with the organization first in mind and the needs of our students, because they're there to serve the students of our association. And we want someone who is going to be personable. I know that there's state and national officers on a member level. I remember as a member, I always saw state officers and I was like, oh man, like that, like I can't talk to that person. Like they're important. Like I can't talk to them. And I was a young member, and I could specifically tell you stories, some of the first times that I built relationships with current state officers, and those individuals really kind of broke down those walls for me and kind of showed me that, hey, these state officers aren't people on a pedestal who can't be touched. They're human just like I am, and they want to get to know me as much as I want to get to know them. And I know the magnitude of the impact that those relationship building opportunities meant for me as a member. We want every member to get to experience that. So having a state officer who possesses good character really just provides that opportunity for more members to get to build those relationships. This is really about member and stakeholder engagement experience. And the last one we're going to talk about is influence. Someone who demonstrates the ability to influence others through modeling expectations, building relationships, and growing the organization. So influence kind of breaks down to, this is a really big one on facilitation. If somebody is going to come in and give a workshop, we don't want them to just talk about something that's important. We want them to leave an impact on the members they speak to. And stand deliver, we want them to leave an impact on the speech they give. So not influence as in a manipulative, I can get you to say what I want you to say way, but influence as in when I speak in a tone that I give the appropriate sincerity to a topic. I give a topic the amount of time that it respects to make sure that everybody in the room understands what I'm talking about. So we want state officers to have the opportunity to go out there and use their workshops and speeches to empower members, to empower stakeholders. And we just want someone to have that ability that when they speak in a manner that people want to know what they're talking about, want to learn more. Just kind of a person that people gravitates to. And that's what we're looking for in influence. Let's go to the scoring system. Every round, every member of the nominating committee is going to be given a scorecard that scorecard's going to have those competencies on it. They are going to score the candidates based off of a system where they can allot a score of a 0, 1, 3, or 5. In the past, we've done a 0 through 5 system where 2s and 4s were accepted. 2s and 4s will not be allowed under any circumstances this year. If you go in and you score if you score a lot of 2s and 4s when we start calculating scores, then there becomes a lot of meshing of scores, and you might have 3 candidates who have the exact same score because there was no forced differentiation. We want the nominating committee, and we're going to prepare the committee to be, we're going to prepare them that when they're going to assign a score, we want them to be confident that this person, if they assign them a 0, this candidate had absolutely hit this competency at all, or had a negative adverse of the competency. So let's say we're doing group facilitation or facilitation, they're in pairs. If a candidate comes in and just bullies another candidate around and kind of forces them to do it their way or the highway, talks over them, always undermines that candidate, that's someone who's not showing effective teamwork. They're going to get a 0 because that's not the type of teamwork, team building that we want for our association. A 1, 3, and 5 means that they displayed this competency. If they displayed it in a way that, hey, we think this person can possess influence, and we think that it's there inside of them, but it just needs to kind of be polished, but they have influence, then they would score a 1. Or let's say for a 3, it's someone who has the ability to work in teams, and maybe they worked well together, but they didn't really just, let's say they were willing to work with them, but they wouldn't always go to them for help or something like that. That would be a 3. They hit the competency, but they didn't master the competency. And since I'm talking about teamwork, we'll go on a 5. A 5, if we're talking about teamwork, this is the candidate who's going to come in. They're going to communicate with the person they're facilitating with. They are going to rely on them for parts of the facilitation. So if you come in and say, hey, if you call on them and say, hey, what do you think about this? How about we do that? And you actively engage with that person, that's where you would hit a 5. You have mastered this competency. If your communication is through the roof, you make good eye contact, you genuinely engage in the conversations you have, that's where you would hit a 5. So just to break down what the 0 through 5 system looks like, the committee will be given in detail through criteria what a grading rubric is going to look like. So we're not going to have any gray area of, well, in my opinion, this is a 5, but in, so-and-so's opinion, that's what a 5 is. When we give them a scorecard, there's going to be, for areas of knowledge, a 1, a 3, and a 5 this is what it looks like. If they're doing an advocacy round, a 1 is that they only knew 1 or 2 things about areas or this topic. A 5 would be candidate can fluently conversate about this topic without having to get into uncomfortable situations or such and such. We're going to have an exact breakdown of this is what a 5 is. So there's not going to be any opinion based. Well, in my opinion, a 5 is this. It's going to be laid out for every committee member exactly. This is what you're looking for, and this is what they deserve if they hit these specific areas of competency. Every competency in every round will be scored equally. So there won't be any weighted competencies. It's not going to be in facilitation, teamwork, and communication matters more than any other competency. Every round, every competency is considered equal.
And just to touch on that last point, I've been doing a lot of communicating with our current candidates. And this is something that we, especially this year, like Tristan and I have talked, wanted to hit home with our current candidates and future candidates. For example, like Stand and Deliver, it's known as a knowledge round because you have to know what you're talking about. And while speaking to the candidates, we're trying to remind them, as much as you are being scored on knowledge in that round, even though it's a knowledge round, you are being scored on character. You are being scored on influence. You are being scored on being a team player. So whenever we use these competencies, we use them equally in every single round. There is not a round where areas of knowledge is more important or character is more important. These are like the gold standard competencies because they can be molded for different rounds and different situations.
So one thing that we'll be doing this year is a drop score system. We have, to my knowledge, we've never used the drop score system in the state of Louisiana for our nominating committee. This is something that I was introduced to back in October when I was on national nomcom, and something I really, really appreciated. Throughout the nominating committee process, we are going to prepare our committee members and give them every opportunity to ensure that our process is a non-biased process. But at the same time, there's going to be some type of implicit bias that's going to internally happen in every member, and we want to avoid that at all possible. That's not something we can control. That's simply human nature. When I was going through the national nominating committee process, we spent 2 months learning about bias. And even when we were going through the process, this is still a precaution that we took because human nature, we will never, under any circumstances, be able to eliminate bias. So if we can't control it on a human aspect, then the one way that we can control it is we can do a drop score. So out of the 13 people that'll be sitting on the committee, for each individual candidate for every round, we're going to drop the highest and the lowest score for committee member score. So if there's 13 scores entered, the highest one will be erased, the lowest one will be erased, and we will take the 11 scores that are in the middle, and that is what's going to be calculated for the candidate score. And what that does is if there's any type of positive, one person has positive bias towards somebody and they score this individual really high, well, that's something that we're going to be able to avoid because that score won't be counted. And if somebody has negative bias and scores the candidate really low, we'll also be able to avoid that too. But by still taking the 11 scores, we're still going to get an accurate representation of what the committee feels this person's level of competency is. So we feel like this is the best way to keep the system honest and fair, and just in full transparency. We just want to ensure that every candidate has the best possible opportunity to succeed. And we feel like using this drop score system kind of sets us up for greater success than we've ever been able to achieve in the past. And that's kind of the intent of drop score and the way that we're going to manage drop score. So deliberation, this is kind of the part of the process that gets really near and dear to my heart. Throughout deliberation, there will be absolutely no conversation or deliberation about the candidates' performances or scores that will take place amongst the committee members until the committee meets for formal deliberation. The committee will never see candidate scores until we get into the formal deliberation room. And that's something that I really want to stress is that committee member A is not going to be able to tell committee member B, well, I thought this candidate really did well. I'm going to continue to score them high. We're never going to give our committee members the opportunity to be able to have those conversations because we want to make sure that we have an equal or an honest process that doesn't have any type of influence from other committee members. And the same reason that we don't give them scores is because we don't, throughout the middle of the process, we don't want the committee members to be able to see that candidate 12 is really doing well, and we like where they're sitting in the team or in the ranking. So we're going to keep scoring them high, even if they go and bomb around. We're going to score them high because they're doing good anyway. Though these are all just ways that we're going to try to avoid any type of bias or any type of negative or positive influence that committee members may have with each other. The scores will be used as an indicator and will help the committee's decision, but they will not be the sole factor in determining the team replacement. This is what I'm really passionate about. Scores are important. Scores are extremely important. But scores are not the sole factor of how you place a team. Scores are a quantitative measurement of how students or how candidates do in the process. But what we also do additional to scores is that the committee members are going to be asked, advised, and we will ensure that they take really in-depth, detailed notes on things that are said in rounds. the way that a student uses effective communication or influence. And those notes that they're going to take, that's going to be a qualitative approach to how a person does in the round. So we're going to use scores as an indicator to say, hey, this is how they scored. But we're also going to ask our committee members to come back into their notes. And when they look at scores, we also want to know what they observed, because observations are just as important as scores. So I'm going to say it again. I know I've said it numerous times. Scores are indicators. Scores will help guide us into making sure that our decisions are fair, but we are not going to take 10 people and score them 1 through 10 and say, well, that's how they're going to sit, because we want to use our qualitative observations that our committee members make, to be able to make sure that our team and our team is slated to be the best representatives for our state association. So more about deliberation. During the deliberation, the committee will review and address all candidates. Every single candidate that goes through the process will be deliberated about. There's not going to be a point where we're going to say, okay, well, based on these scores, we're gonna make a cut here, and everybody up top's on the team and everybody below is not going to be considered. That's not what the process is about. We are going to have fair and honest deliberation about every candidate that goes through the process. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, and something that I know Sara and I will ensure that every candidate gets the best, the best possible opportunity, that we set them up for success, and that we ensure that we cover everything about every candidate. And the way we're going to do that is that any statement that's made about a candidate, or how they perform throughout the round, must be backed by evidence. So I talked about quantitative and qualitative assessments. Our scores are going to be our quantitative assessments, but when we are deliberating, we are never going to we're never going to talk about, well, I feel like because so and so had, the best score in communication, they're the best communicators. Well, feel likes are not really what we're aiming for in the nominating committee process. We want hard evidence, and this is something I will be extremely strict about in the deliberation process. If someone makes an observation, I will always instruct them to lead off saying, throughout the process, I observed blank in this round when so-and-so did this, in this round when so-and-so did that. I want to make sure that everything that we talk about is, one, fair to the candidate and fair to the association. Our deliberation process is going to be very strictly ran, but I think I know it's going to be for the best outcome for our team and for our association. This is the exact same deliberation process that I went through in October. We deliberated for many, many hours in a very strict process. And to this day, I'll tell you that while it was frustrating going through it at the time, it allowed us to work more efficiently through the candidates and pick the best 6 people that could possibly represent National FFA. And that's the exact same mindset that I'm going to go into state nomcom with, and the exact same mindset that I want to instill in our nominating committee members, that when we are deliberating, we're deliberating observations, we're deliberating facts, and we're deliberating things that is fair to speak about the candidate. All positions in the team placements must be unanimously approved by the entire committee. We used we called it our consent check when we did national nomcom. It was thumbs up if you're confident, halfway if you're comfortable, and thumbs down if you are not comfortable with a situation. Before we ever slate a position, I'll ask all committee members to close their eyes and give me a thumbs up, a half thumb, or a thumbs down. If under any circumstances a committee member is not comfortable with putting somebody on the team or putting someone in a position, we will continue to deliberate why this position is, why they have this position. At the same time, we're not going to ever let someone hold consensus, or kind of kidnap consensus is what we called it on nationals. we want to make sure that this person, they have said everything they possibly, want to say about a candidate, but at the same time, it's not going to be, well, I'm just not comfortable with so and so being state president because, you know, 2 years ago I talked to him and we had a bad experience. Prior knowledge, prior experiences are not allowed in the deliberation room. So we want the committee to be comfortable and confident in our state officer team, but at the same time, we want it to be a fair process. So I will have we will, along with the committee, we'll come up with some type of consensus agreement. What do we want consensus to look like? But this is something that every single person on the committee, before we leave that room and give us a nominating committee report, is absolutely going to be confident in the team that we produce as a committee. And this just ensures the decisions, the reflection of the committee as a whole. We pick the committee is picked in a manner that they are an accurate representation of the interests of our members. That's why we have the same number of people from every area. That's why we pick the committee in this manner. So if the committee stands as a representation of what we want, the state, or they serve as a representation of the interests of the state association, we want to make sure that those needs are met by this state officer team. And that's our main goal, is that we're going to produce a state officer team that's the best possible 10 candidates to serve the members of our association. That is always the goal at every point in our entire process. And then committee's decisions will be announced via nominating committee report. The nominating committee chair is going to announce the report during the business delegate session. And following there is when all of the on-stage activities will begin. But this report is going to be, I said earlier, it's going to be unanimous consensus, and it's going to be an accurate representation of what the committee feels is for the best interest of the association. Deliberations is something I'm excited about, something I'm passionate about, and I think we're going to have a really good time this year. But I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of open up this process to you and talk to you about, what it looks like behind the doors, because we don't ever want there to be any type of, oh, that door's closed, they're doing something back there, because it's not. We're a really transparent system. We're here to serve the association. We're here to serve its members. And that's what this process is built on.
If you have any questions after viewing this presentation, like Tristan and I have tried to, really repeat, we value transparency. We are happy to answer any questions that we can regarding the process, the preparation, the selection, deliberation, scoring, anything that can be answered. You can always contact us through the state FFA office, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.